Hey everyone, Linguistization here. This is an M1 carbine 22 caliber made by Chiappa firearms. Now in this video I'm going to show you how to disassemble and reassemble this rifle. While going through that process, I'm also going to show you the differences between the 30 caliber M1 carbine and this 22 caliber M1 carbine. Now before this video I safety checked this rifle, but I'm going to do it one more time just for safety precautions. Pull the slide back, lock it back, and look. Nothing in the chamber. Okay, now that you've safety checked the rifle, what you're going to need to do next is remove this screw on the bayonet lug. Basically, you're just going to unscrew this real quick. Do not pull the screw out, but just let it come loose a little bit. Basically, you're just going to pull it forward a little bit, move it up, and then you can separate the top grip. This one's kind of stuck a little bit. Separate that, and then the whole assembly should just come right out of the stock. Now that you removed it from the stock, what you'll need to do next is remove this pin right in there. I'm not sure if you guys can see that well. You're going to remove that pin that's right in there. That's holding the trigger group onto the receiver. But basically, you're going to want to do is get a punch set if you can. If not, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible. Basically, what you're going to do is get a hammer and a punch. You're going to want to punch it out. Now, I got to try and do this real quick. But you want to try and get this in a vise if you have one. But I don't, so I'm going to struggle. Basically, just tap it out a little bit. Some aren't going to be as stubborn as mine, but my pin's a little stubborn. It's a little hard to pop out, but after you're done, it should look something like that. And you get this little pin. Now if you look real careful, this looks like it's just a little bit of sheet metal that's been rolled up, but it's not that bad. Basically, you're going to move that off to the side, and what you can do now is separate the trigger group from the receiver. And what you're going to want to do, if you look right in here, it's kind of like gripped in a little bit by the receiver, held in by there like a dovetail sort of. And basically what you're going to want to do is just take the trigger group and slide it back like this, and it should just separate like that. Okay, now that you separated the receiver from the trigger group, now we're going to take apart the trigger group. Basically what you want to do is take the trigger group here, and what you're going to want to do is pull the spring back right here and take out that post right off the hammer. And basically what you want to do is just, it's really hard to show this, but just pull the spring back, pull the post out like that, and just pull them apart. Basically that's what the post is. Sorry, I got a little hair on it. Okay, what you're going to do is just take the spring, take the post, just put those off to the side, and that's basically how you take those off. Now what we're going to do is take the hammer off. Basically you're going to take this little silver pin right there and just punch it out and just push it out. You won't really need to punch it out, but mine's a little stiff, I don't know why. Basically what you're going to want to do, I'm trying to do this, show you. Just pull that pin out, hold the hammer a little bit because the sear's pressed right on it like this. So it's going to try and push off a little bit. Basically just pull the pin out and just pull the hammer out. See how the sear's right in there? Basically you pull the trigger back and it attaches right there on this little cutout part right there on the sear. Basically that's when it just lets go to hit the firing pin. Okay, now what we're going to try and do is take out the sear and the trigger and this little spring inside there. Thing to be cautious about with this is underneath the sear and in between the trigger there's another little small spring. It's right in between there. You can't see it right now, but I'll show you in a second. But it's very small. If you lose it, you won't have a working M1 carbine anymore. But basically what you're going to want to do is, see this little silver pin in there? You're going to want to just punch that out. If you don't have a punch, as I said, find something to use as a punch. But basically you just want to punch it out of the way, but be careful. The sear is under tension from a spring, and so is the trigger. So basically you want to try and like face these upside down and then punch it out, have the pin fall out so they just hit the table so they don't go bouncing off everywhere. But for purposes of showing you, I can't do that, so I'm going to try and do this very carefully. I'm going to put pressure on the sear, basically just push out the pin. You got this little tiny pin right there, and basically what you want to do is very carefully pull out the pin. Now the sear is going to come loose, so is the trigger. Now you have the sear right here, basically right on the little bump indent right there is where the spring goes. Now if you look very carefully, you'll see that spring inside there. Just right inside there. That spring, do not lose. If you lose it, you don't have a working M1 carbine. The spring's not really attached in there, it just pops right out. But be very careful because it is a very small spring. Just don't lose that. Now for this trigger, there's another spring that's right inside there. See the spring that's right inside there? It's holding basically that trigger in place for when everything else is attached. It's keeping tension on the trigger to keep it pushed down. But basically for this, you want to just kind of tilt it up forward a little bit. Put your hand over it. I'm going to try and do this while showing you. But basically, just like, as I said, do this all upside down. Basically, you're just going to push the trigger assembly out. I'm going to put my hand right there. Basically, you just want to push it from the bottom here. And basically just push it out. It comes out like that. Not sure if you guys saw that or anything, but basically the trigger comes out. This is a very small spring, just like the other one. And that's pretty much it on the trigger group. You can do the magazine and safety. I don't know how to do it. I'm guessing by this because there's safe. That's fire. That's safe. But if you push a little harder, it goes forward like this, and then you can push it out. I don't feel confident about anything that. Plus, all this is plastic. So, like, there's a small little metal pin inside there, and there's a spring right there. But other than that, you really don't have to worry about it. Like, for the most part, just keep it oiled, and you won't have any problems. And that's pretty much the trigger group right there. See how you got right inside there where the spring goes? Basically, this will go right there on the lip right there, and you're going to push it back in place later. But basically, here's this other spring. Another small spring, not as small as the other one, but still small nonetheless. You do not want to lose these because you're not going to have a gun anymore. Basically, you just lay those out. Now you've completely disassembled the trigger group. Okay, now that you've disassembled the trigger group, now basically you're just gonna move that out of the way, and now we're gonna go on to the barrel, the bolt, the operating rod, and operating rod spring and guide. Basically what you're going to do, unlike the original, there's normally just like a little indent pin with this operating rod guide. Basically it just holds in by pressure by the spring, but this one is actually screwed in, which I like a little bit better, but it's also a little bit more of a hassle to take apart. But basically what you're going to want to do is unscrew that before you can actually take apart anything. And then once you have that unscrewed, now we go on to taking out the operating rod, the bolt, and the spring. Okay, so basically what you're going to want to do, if you actually look right in here, try and get this as best for you guys to see. There's this little cutout groove part right here, and if you look down here on the bottom, it's really hard to see, but right in there, right as this pin is touching, there's this little bump. Basically that is going to just go right above here, and you're going to pull out the operating rod, just kind of pull it out. There's the same thing right here. There's this little cutout groove right here, and then basically this is just going to slide out that way too. But you're going to want to pull this part out first. So basically what you're going to want to do is just pull back on the operating rod, sort of like lift up if you can. Try and do this. It's really difficult to do. Basically, it's gonna come out like that. From right here, basically, you can just take out the bolt through the bottom. It's having a little bit of trouble. It's in the wrong way. There's your bolt. You can take apart this bolt, but it's staked in, so you're gonna have to restake it every single time. But basically, you can take out the extractor. It's held in by a pin. Just punch that out. But right here, where the firing pin and there's a spring holding the firing pin in, you have to restake it every time. So I'm pretty sure no one wants to keep doing that every single time. So basically, don't do it. And that's your bolt right there. And then basically, you have the operating rod still attached onto the spring. So basically, we've gotten this part out of the guide. So now we're gonna take this part out. So basically, just pull this back right here. Basically, you're gonna show you guys that because I didn't get that in the camera that well. Basically, you're gonna wanna pull on this, kind of just twist it out. Basically, it should just come loose. Okay, it's actually being held right here, so just kind of lift that up a little bit, and it just pops right out. That's your operating rod. Here's the operating guide and spring. Operating rod, guide, and spring. Now, on the operating rod, you have this little pin to hold back the operating rod. Just this little tiny pin right here. If you look inside there, you have it. So basically, you can just oil that right in there, keep that moving pretty smooth and everything. And basically, that's a full disassemble on the M1 carbine 22. Now, assembling this back together, basically just reverse process of what we just did. Take the bolt, slide the back in as good as you can. Make it so when you pull this back, that stacks right on top of the bolt so it catches on. Basically just put that back in so it moves back and forth. That's the bolt, operating rod spring, operating rod guide, barrel, everything put back together. Basically just move this out of the way so you can go back to doing the trigger assembly. What you're gonna do with this is the side that doesn't have this, that's not connected like this one, the connected side you're gonna have hooked on this lip. This part's gonna get attached right in this little upper hole right there. So basically what you want to do is take it like this, stack it like that in there, like that. Basically what you're going to do is just push it back a little. Ooh. No, we're not. So I said you guys need to watch out when you do this. Take it like that. You're going to want to put pressure on the spring. Sorry, I forgot to tell you guys that. Kind of just push it back. See how it just goes down back in like that? You want to kind of hold the trigger back, and while you do that, take your spring, or not your spring, your pin, sorry, pin. You want to kind of make a slave pin. Okay. Basically have it like that so it keeps it attached to where you can pull the trigger, but to where the trigger's not going out, and so you can basically just push the pin once you have everything in. You want to basically take the spring, and just put it right in the hole where the trigger is. Basically you're going to have it like that inside there. You're going to take the sear where the little bump is. Basically you want to put that against the spring in this way. So basically just drop that in there like that. Kind of push the sear back a little bit. Kind of push it. Push down with this finger and pull back on that finger. And while doing that, push the slave pin over. It's really hard to do, so you gotta, like that. Basically, just goes into place like that. First it'll be kind of difficult, but you'll get the hang of it. Take your hammer, take your pin, you're gonna push down on the sear with it, but line up the holes. The hammer's gonna go in like this. You got the little cutout. Basically just take it, push it down. While doing that, push on like that, and you're gonna get in like that. Take your spring and your little tiny guide rod for the spring. You're gonna want to put it right in this hole right here. Basically you're gonna have it go like this, down into there. And you wanna put this little head right in this little notch right there. Test it, make sure it works. It works. Once you have all that done, now you're going to put everything back together. What you want to do is line it up like this, right in the back. Kind of just push forward. Try not to push too hard. It's a little hard at first. Basically just slide it in, line up these holes right there, take your pin and put it back. Pins can be back in place. Test everything before you attach the stock back on. That's basically how it works. Take the stock, you're going to see this little cutout indent groove. It's going to fit right in there with that. See how it lines up? Just drop it in. Put on the top grip right here. It's going to go into this little cutout groove right there. See how it just fits? Pretty snug. Just fits pretty snug in there. You're going to take the bayonet lug, push it back over, make sure there's this little spring attached right there. Basically what you're going to want to do, it's a little hard to do, but you're going to push pressure on the bayonet like this way and then screw down. Make sure that this little spring lifts up onto the little indent notch. So I'll try and do this for you. And then again, test everything. Of course, empty magazine. Just going to test it one more time with the magazine. It does lock after the last shot on this. So basically, very careful and do this. You will pinch your finger and it will hurt. Slide that, test it in, it works. Pop out your magazine. And that's a full disassemble on the M1 Carbine 22. If y'all have any questions or concerns, please leave a comment down below. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll be coming out with a new video, one video every week. My next video I'll be doing a review on this gun. I'll try and do it at my gun range. It's depending if they'll let me. And lastly, thank you for watching, and please subscribe.